How are we doing, everybody? Welcome into the SFS channel and another episode of Fantasy Trade Advice. In this video, I'll be breaking down 5 players at the running back position that absolutely have been killing it as of late or this past week in week 8 as we now enter into week 9. And I'll be talking through some different scenarios of why I'm trying to sell these players, what circumstances you might be looking to move off of these players, because it's truly never a one-size-fits-all type scenario for trade circumstances, but we'll be breaking down all that stuff and more in today's video. By all means, if you have a trade question for me, put it down in the comment section below or join our community Discord server in the description of today's video, and myself or someone else in the community here will get back to you and hook you up with an answer for your trade questions. So thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. Let's dive right on into my first sell high running back here for week 9. All right, before I get too down into the gritty details here of selling high on Foreman, I just want to give this man my praise and my props here for this absolutely monstrous performance that pulled a lot of my teams out of the gutter here for this week. I'm actually in a situation right now. It's halftime of Monday Night Football, and I'm recording this particular episode. I was down 2 points with my opponent having no one left and myself having Joe Burrow, and I'm actually farther behind than I was starting that game because he's negative with his turnovers, but wouldn't be here without Foreman. So why are we selling Foreman high here? Of course, he had 118 yards, 3 touchdowns, had a 30-plus point game regardless of what scoring format you were in. He was spectacular here. So the reason I'm selling high on him is a couple of things. First and foremost, I do not trust the Carolina Panthers to continuously provide this level of opportunity for, yes, a talented running back, a guy who's shown us in different spurts throughout his career that he can be a plug-and-play starter for an NFL franchise, but I just don't trust this sustainability to continue moving forward here. The reasoning for that is while PJ Walker's kind of revitalized this team and given them some sparks here and really shown, especially for DJ Moore's purposes, his fantasy season has been really revived here, but I still don't think it's just quite realistic enough to expect this level of production. He's producing the last 2 weeks here like a top 12 fantasy running back. So my expectation is that he hovers somewhere in the middle to low end RB2 range, maybe even lower than that. Chuba Hubbard is technically the starter for this team, and he's a guy that's going to have a situation here where being out week 8 with an ankle injury could return and obviously take over some more work in this offense. So for Foreman, even without Chuba out there, it was a 68% snap share. That's fine and good, but again, that number could deteriorate. I do expect him to be the most likely player on this team to score rushing touchdowns and have that valuable level of involvement for this team. But again, 3 TDs is totally uncharacteristic for him or this offense in general, and I just think that we have to taper our expectations for this Carolina Panthers group a little bit. So again, potential reduction in his role here. I do think he still sustains valuable touches here, but even if that snap count percentage goes down to low 60s into the 50s or so, that's going to limit that ceiling a little bit here. And again, there are offensive limitations that didn't necessarily flash this weekend up against an awful Falcons defensive unit. Tony Pollard, very similar situation here. So first and foremost, I know that there is a camp of people that I will not be able to convince of this take. There is a group that believes that Tony Pollard is the running back to own in Dallas, that he is the quote-unquote, like destined starter for this team, and that he's going to take over and be like a league-winning running back for this Cowboys offense. Now, I am right there with the people who say that Tony Pollard is the best running back on this Cowboys roster. I believe that to be true. I'm not going to argue that take because, again, I think that that's the reality of the situation. But again and again, time after time, we are shown, proven, and told by Jerry Jones in ownership and high-up power of this Cowboys organization that Ezekiel Elliott is a focal point and a staple centerpiece of this Dallas roster. There's no getting around it. Jerry Jones said after the game, there is no running back controversy. This team runs through Zeke. So despite the 9.35 electrifying yards per carry this week, the 131 yards on the ground, the 3 frickin' rushing touchdowns, the icing goal, game-winning, ceiling, icing, rip down the left sideline for a touchdown, his, 15 touches, one of them being a 16-yard reception, I'm not taking the bait here. I'm selling. I'm looking for an RB needy team. Yes, Tony can put up these phenomenal numbers for a few game stretch here, or as long as Zeke is out of the lineup with that knee injury or limited in some fashion. But the best case scenario here is situational use. Again, his ceiling is higher than Zeke. He is explosive. He is at times, and they don't really use him super at a high volume in terms of his passing game role, but when he is used in that fashion, he's capable of making plays in that facet of things. It's just not a situation where I trust the consistent usage of his overall potential, and that's what it comes down to here. The opportunity and upside is there, but I don't ever think Dallas will give him the opportunity to take full advantage of that. I actually heard a really interesting stat today, and that is dating back to his high school time. Tony Pollard has never seen more than 15 touches in a career game. So volume at every stage and every facet function of his career has been limited in some extent. Now, I did not create that stat. I heard it simply on Sports Talk Radio this week, so just tossing that out there for your digestion here. If there is some exception and that stat is proven wrong, by all means, let me know. But just pass along the word that I heard on, it was either ESPN or some sort of sports function. So Tony Pollard here. Is the potential and the capability there? Of course it is. But do I expect that to be, utilized and capitalized on here? Probably not. Jamaal Williams, again, same situation as Tony Pollard. There are people that will tell you and that honestly believe to their core that this is the RB1 for the Detroit Lions. I do not believe that is the case. Is he an absolutely painfully annoying touchdown vulture for DeAndre Swift owners? Of course he is. But in circumstances where you are not the the DeAndre Swift owner, am I selling him high? Yes, I am. We don't want to play fantasy football scared here. And that is exactly the way that fantasy football players that own DeAndre Swift play the game right now, because they don't trust him. They do not trust his health. After seeing this past week in his limited role, they do not trust his usage. There are, opportunities to be had here. You could buy yourself a starting level receiver potentially. Something can be scraped off of their team that benefits you more in the long term than having Jamaal Williams in your bench does. And I get it. He's productive. He's a skillful playmaker. But at the end of the day, are you really starting him on a consistent basis? And I think that for a lot of teams, except for deep formats with really needy RB help, the answer to that question is no. What I've noticed about Jamaal this season, he's actually been the most productive when DeAndre Swift is suited up on the field in limited fashion. And unfortunately, that's been a little bit more frequent than we would expect here because of the fact that he's been nicked and dinged and recovering from injuries. But at the end of the day, I do think that DeAndre Swift is the most talented, productive, and starting playmaker for this Detroit backfield. And that's what I'm sticking with here with this take. Into Melvin Gordon here. Denver, it's a split backfield right now. You've got Latavius Murray and Melvin Gordon both touching the rock. This week, Latavius was more efficient. He got more opportunities on the ground, 14-9. Both scored a touchdown, but at the end of the day, we all know the fatal flaws of this Denver backfield. So the take here is simple. If you're a deep running back roster that can afford to expend some depth here, use Gordon either in a package deal as a throw-in piece to make yourself an upgrade at a starting position, or use him straight up 1-for-1 to get yourself a low-end wide receiver 2 or a flex lineup piece if that's something you need for your roster. So for me, this is a running back that, again, is a touchdown-dependent play. If he does not score one, this offense doesn't have the juice to go out there and get him 100 scrimmage yards on a consistent basis and give you lineup-worthy production without that touchdown. So Melvin, looking to move on from him here. Heck, even Latavius Murray, you can. I simply put Melvin forward here because I think he has more name value at this point in time, which will get you more on the trade market, as well as the fact that he is perceived by many as the starter, despite the fact that he's outused by Latavius this week. So Gordon, selling high on him as well. Last up, Antonio Gibson here. He tied J.D. McKissic this week for the team high in snap count percentage at 36%. That is buns. That's not something you want out of a team's most productive back here. Now, Brian Robinson, again, technically the team starter. He had a very low snap count percentage for this game. And at the end of the day, that comes down and is kind of attributed to overall game script for this offense. So I think that in situations and circumstances where they lead more throughout the contest, we'll see more B-Rob running the football. But again, they're trailing. They had to have 2 long desperation drives late in that game to ultimately get things done there. And without that pass catching involvement, involvement in the touchdown scored. He did have 14 touches, this being Antonio Gibson, 7 rushing, 7 receiving. He probably, without those 7 catches, for a fact, he is not getting to the amount of scrimmage yards he had and the overall production that he produced. So for me, this is a simple sell high. Again, similar situation as Melvin Gordon. They're using him as a helping piece to make an upgrade for an RB needy team, or you're going out there and buying a flex level lineup piece that's a bit more dependable and predictable in terms of how they're going to go about producing for you. So 5 must-sell running backs, again, for week 9 fantasy football. We are moving through this season, now officially getting to the halfway marker of the season. To recap, Deontay Foreman, Tony Pollard, Jamaal Williams, Melvin Gordon / Latavius Murray, and Antonio Gibson are the backs I'm looking to sell here for this week. So as always, if you enjoyed today's episode, smash that like button, click the subscribe button, and again, turn that bell on so you're never late for a new piece of content here. We're posting fantasy content like this every single day of the week, and you don't want to miss out on any of that. Again, trade questions, comment section below or the Discord server, and I'll see you there. Peace out.